Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I hope you're all doing very well. And yes, I just watched Fantastic Beasts, The Secrets of Dumbledore. Let's talk about it. So before we get any further into this review, we need to address the elephant in the room. Yes, I did in fact change my hairstyle for the first time in 5 years. In literally 5 years. I'm still not used to it. And if you catch me looking at myself on the screen, it's because I'm looking at the exposed forehead. But we're going to get through this, okay? We're going to get through this because I have a lot to discuss when it comes to this film. Trust me. And hopefully that will act as enough of a distraction from me not freaking out about the change in look. Now, before we get into my thoughts on Fantastic Beasts, blah, 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 as per usual, if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to my channel and make sure you turn on your notifications so that you can be told when I upload next. And also follow me on Twitter, where you can check out my thoughts on some extra TV shows that I don't make reviews on here on YouTube, and also my general thoughts throughout the week. Sometimes I'm logging on there more often, so catch me there as well. Now, without further ado, let's get into my review slash roast of Fantastic Beasts 3. So Fantastic Beasts 3 is directed by David Yates, who's been directing all of the Fantastic Beasts films and a bunch of the Harry Potter films. And actually, speaking of Harry Potter, this happens to be my first ever Harry Potter adjacent review on this channel. Yes, I have yet to review a Harry Potter thing on this channel, and so a lot of you guys may not know what my take is on Harry Potter. And if you can tell from my accent, I am in fact from the UK, where Harry Potter holds a near and dear special place in people's hearts. At least people other than me. People other than me, because guess what? I don't care about Harry Potter. I don't care. He's supposed to be this like national treasure. I don't care. I literally could not care less. You could not pay me to care less about Harry Potter, okay? So yeah, that's my general stance on the franchise, and so you can imagine my thoughts and feelings walking into not only a Harry Potter thing, okay, a Wizarding World thing, but a Fantastic Beasts film. Like, if I don't care about Harry Potter, how do you think I feel about Fantastic Beasts? Okay, we're gonna get into this installment as well as my thoughts in general when it comes to this franchise in a moment. But yeah, I did just want to let you guys know what my thoughts were regarding the Wizarding World, because I've yet to discuss it here on this channel. So let's start off this review the way that this film starts off itself, and that is with the relationship between Grindelwald and Dumbledore, because this film is called The Secrets of Dumbledore, and the big secret at hand here is that Dumbledore was in love with Grindelwald. Now, much has been made about this secret and this relationship, mostly outside of the films. Actually, if you think about it, the biggest deal that has been made has really been in real life, regarding people's reactions to this, you know, gay relationship in the franchise, and especially as we've seen in the news in foreign countries, or you know, non-Western countries like China, where the film actually had to be edited to tone down the gayness. I don't know what I don't know how they justified it. I don't know how they explained it, but I guess they wanted to tone down the LGBTQ relationship at the center of this story. And when I read that in the news, of course I was horrified, and of course I was dismayed by the fact that, you know, whilst Hollywood seems to slowly but surely be taking baby steps in the right direction when it comes to LGBTQ representation, it seems as though there's still the opt-out option regarding distribution, because some of these more conservative countries are flat out refusing to allow the depiction of these relationships on screen in these Hollywood productions. And we've seen this with, you know, films like Eternals, for instance, where that was edited in the Middle East to, I guess, de-gayify that film as well. And I think it's just horrific. I think it's just like 100 steps backwards when it comes to LGBTQ representation, especially globally, because, you know, in the West, we are starting to see a bigger shift, although as 2 steps are taken, you know, 5 steps are taken backwards as well when it comes to legislation and everything, especially in America, and in fact here in the UK as well, low key. But at least we're starting to see a shift in media, but it seems as though that isn't echoed throughout the world equally, which is really sad to see. But anyways, I was really disappointed to see this story, but in the back of my mind I was wondering, well, how are they able to even, you know, get rid of the LGBTQ relationship at the center of the story to begin with, because it's such a key aspect of this story and of Dumbledore's character at this point in his life. So how were they able to remove this aspect of this story so easily to appease the Chinese government? But after having seen the film, I see how it was so easy for them to remove it, because it really wasn't like emphasized as much as I thought it would be, considering it is a central focus in this storyline. It really wasn't something that jumped out at you. It was relatively tame. There is a moment in the film where Dumbledore literally says that he was in love with Grindelwald, but like I said, there could have been several takes of that line or variations of that line that were played for foreign audiences to appease their oppressive governments. And so I see how it was so easy for them to just kind of edit it around a little bit to make it more, you know, palatable to those audiences. Aside from that whole ordeal, we do have the relationship of Dumbledore and Grindelwald at the center of this story, something that was promised to us in the previous film but was kind of lacking there as well. And I do appreciate the fact that even though, again, tiny steps were made, some steps at least were made to emphasize the fact that Dumbledore did have that special relationship with Grindelwald. I don't know if it's supposed to endear me to him, the fact that he was in love with a Nazi. Like, I don't know if I'm supposed to be like, over the fact that he was in love with a Nazi, you know what I mean? But anyways, that kind of turns me off Dumbledore, though there are plenty of reasons why we shouldn't be rooting for Dumbledore the way that we are. But the two do have this meetup at the beginning of the film where Dumbledore is kind of pleading with Grindelwald to stop this madness, and Grindelwald's like, nah, once upon a time you used to be on the same side as me, like what happened, what changed? And then he just kind of sips his tea and he's like, at least the muggles are good for something. They make good tea, and then he buggers off. Like, that's literally what happens. Again, I was expecting more. I was expecting more sexual tension there, but we didn't really get to sit with these characters for very long. At least, though, we did get that, you know, face-to-face confrontation at the beginning of the film to really set up this theme. Now, of course, this opening scene is also where we get the first look at the newly recast Grindelwald, who used to be portrayed by Johnny Depp and is now portrayed by Mads Mikkelsen. And I'm gonna say something that's real controversial, okay? You know, strap on your seatbelts. Strap on your seatbelts, but I'm gonna take you back to, what was it, the year 2015, where Fantastic Beasts 1 came out. I'm gonna take you back to that era, okay? And I'm gonna remind you, that when that film came out and everyone was watching Colin Farrell portray the not Grindelwald character that Grindelwald secretly was in that film, everyone loved his portrayal of that character. Like, everyone was a huge fan of Colin Farrell portraying this villainous character. And then at the very end, he was revealed to actually be Johnny Depp. And I want to remind you now, because there seems to be some kind of revisionist history going around. I want to remind you right now that people were actually disappointed that it ended up being Johnny Depp. Like, people were low-key, high-key disappointed that it was Johnny Depp in the end when he, you know, transformed into his true self. Now, I do understand why it is that people have gone back and said, like, oh, Johnny Depp was so iconic in this role. I'm so upset that he's been recast, blah, blah, blah. Like, obviously, there are a lot of Johnny Depp supporters out there, you know, on the internet, and a lot of his fans, especially regarding his, you know, private affairs that are going on that have been made very, very public. So people want to support him during this time, and people want to be outraged towards Warner Brothers over the fact that they did recast him and not Amber Heard. And so there is a whole controversy there that I completely understand. But just based off of the performances and based off of the appearances in this franchise, I simply want to remind you all as a public service announcement that we were all disappointed that Colin Firth wasn't portraying Johnny Depp's character. I'm sorry, but I preferred Colin Firth in the role. And the fact that this guy has now been played by 3 different actors is kind of mind-boggling. We should have just stuck to Colin Firth. Maybe there were scheduling issues. Okay, maybe he was portraying the Penguin at the time. I don't know. But ideally, it would have been Colin Firth the whole time, because I think he would have been perfect casting for this character regardless. But as it stands, we do have Mads Mikkelsen now portraying this character, the 3rd actor to do so, as I said. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm a huge Mads Mikkelsen fan. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Huge Mads Mikkelsen fan. Okay, so I wasn't disappointed by this news whatsoever. Like I said, I was on team Colin Farrell to begin with. So when I heard that Mads Mikkelsen was now portraying this character, I was pretty optimistic. I was happy to see the change. And I actually think, you know, speaking to his performance in the film, that he actually suits Dumbledore better as like a potential ex-lover. Because to me, Johnny Depp's character is just so over the top, and that is what he is known to do. He really gets into these characters and, you know, really does something different and transformative with his roles. So it makes sense that he took that approach with Grindelwald as well. And I do think that that approach was very sinister and very visually striking. In the case of Mads Mikkelsen's version, there are aspects and elements of Johnny Depp's portrayal of Grindelwald that are taken on here, but everything is just toned down a notch. And whilst I do think that it makes for a plainer villain, I do also think that it matches Dumbledore's energy a bit better. And like I said, it makes them seem like more of a match and like someone that Dumbledore could actually fall in love with plausibly. So yeah, when it comes to the Johnny Depp recast, I am not a Johnny Depp hater by any means. Okay, I think he's portrayed some of the most iconic characters in all of cinema ever. Okay, and he doesn't need me saying so, please. But I do think that in the first Fantastic Beasts, it was a little bit of a shame that we didn't just have Colin Farrell to begin with. But seeing as though, you know, circumstances have played out over the last few years and this recast has happened, if there was any man who was up for the task, it would be Mads Mikkelsen. And I was really happy to see that he was taken on in this franchise. And I was happy with the new direction of this character, even if it was substantially toned down. But in this movie called Secrets of Dumbledore, not only does Dumbledore have this secret that he was previously in love and perhaps even still loves Grindelwald, the literal Nazi in the wizarding world, but also their love was such that they had actually created this blood pact, this spell that tied them together. And if either one of them had made moves against the other, there would be this okay, so the consequence of going against the blood pact is that the necklace whose pendant has their blood in it, will just kind of squeeze around your wrist. Yeah, that's the big concept. I don't know, but so we'll talk about the blood pact now, shall we? This was a dumb story. Like this was a dumb story. Like the blood pact makes no sense. The blood pact actually makes 0 sense, because not only is the consequence stupid as hell, like it tightens around his wrist a little bit. Okay, thousands upon millions upon billions of lives are at stake, and you can't take a tiny little, you know, tightening of the wrist. Like really? Now Dumbledore earlier says that there may be worse consequences, like should he actually go against Grindelwald, and that's why he can't make any moves against him. But we don't actually see those worst consequences when he does go against him later on. We don't see, like, all I see is the tightening of the wrist. Really, it's not that deep. Like, you should have made moves. You should have tried. You know what I mean? Like, it was just laziness. Now, the stupidness of this blood pact is actually a pretty big deal, because it sets up this whole mission that Dumbledore sets Newt and his gang on throughout the entirety of this film. And we'll talk about the mission later on when we talk about that gang. And they're an afterthought in this review because they're an afterthought in the film itself. Anyways, but the blood pact itself proves to be incredibly stupid and incredibly pointless, because right at the end of the film, Dumbledore does go against Grindelwald. Just when Grindelwald is about to kill Credence, he tries to protect him, and their opposing spells end up breaking the blood pact. And it's like, really? That's literally all it took to destroy this blood pact that was apparently just, you know, impossible to destroy, impossible to undo. But no, all they had to do was go against each other one time. Like the one time the blood pact was tested. The one time the blood pact was tested, it broke apart. So all of this could have been avoided. We didn't have to go through this goofy mission with the Newt Scamander gang. We didn't have to go through any of that. Dumbledore could have actually tried to take down Grindelwald himself without risking, you know, the integrity of his wrists. Like all of that could have been avoided if we had just given it a shot. But because he didn't try, he ended up waiting until the very last minute until the blood pact could actually be broken by just one simple spell. That was silly as hell. That was dumb as hell. I just wanted to talk about Grindelwald himself and his mission, because it seems as though between the last film and this one, he may have had a change of heart, or rather the writers, and in particular J.K. Rowling, may have been forced to change direction. Because in the previous film, you know, in Crimes of Grindelwald, Grindelwald was discussing the upcoming world wars and holocaust that would end humanity itself, and that's why he had to step in and, you know, be superior to the human beings, because what was coming would be ugly and it would affect the wizarding world itself. But now it seems as though Grindelwald does not care about the upcoming wars, and in fact he wants these wars and catastrophes to occur so that humans can just destroy themselves. It's clear to me that this change in motivation is a response to a lot of viewers of the previous film pointing out how weird it is that the heroes would be against Grindelwald when he wanted to prevent the literal Holocaust. Like he wanted to prevent the literal Second World War that destroyed millions upon millions of lives, and the heroes are like, no, we need to let this happen. That was bizarre as hell. So they were like, okay, well, let's make him pro-Holocaust, I guess. Basically an out and out Nazi. Like he's not just a wizarding Nazi anymore. Like he's an out and out Nazi, all ways that you look at it. And fascism and the emergence of Nazism and far-right activism is a huge theme in this film overall. Like, I don't know if you noticed, I don't know if you could tell from the fact that a lot of this film is set in Germany in the early 20th century. Like, they were being really subtle about it, right? But it is a huge aspect of this story, and I understand what J.K. Rowling is trying to do in terms of tackling these themes in the wizarding world, but I have to say, as a weary black woman, as a tired black woman, I'm kind of sick and tired of seeing Nazis on my screen. I'll be fully honest, like I'll be really honest. I've been seeing a lot of this, you know, in media nowadays, and it's because art imitates life, and you know, these issues are unfortunately becoming more and more prevalent in today's society as well. So it makes sense that art would try to reflect on this and comment on this. But like I said, like as a viewer, it's just like, why am I seeing so many Nazis? I saw it in Peacemaker, Peaky Blinders, just so many different shows and films are tackling this subject, and I'm tired. I'm tired. So yes, when it comes to this film, it certainly isn't subtle in the way that it handles these themes, but it's also incredibly confused with where these characters stand. You know, Grindelwald's motives are now so much more blurry because his motivation is not only to elevate the classes of the wizarding peoples, you know, the wizarding world above that of humanity, but he also wants to destroy humanity through these wars as well. So it's kind of like he wants to see the whole world burn, basically. So again, it becomes very muddled because at least previously he had a set goal, even though it was a trash goal. And to say nothing of his disciples. I mean, Queenie, why the hell is Queenie on his goddamn team? It made no sense. At the end of Crimes of Grindelwald, which I watched last week, by the way, on my phone whilst I was working, did not care. Anyway, but I did watch it, okay? And at the end of Crimes of Grindelwald, Queenie walks up to Grindelwald and is like, yeah, like, I want to work with you to establish this future where I won't be allowed to marry the love of my life. Like, I don't understand what the reasoning is behind her switching sides. It made no sense. So yeah, a lot of these characters' motives are just out there in the wind. Like, they make absolutely no sense. The writing for some of these characters is just trash as hell, I have to say. And then tying into the themes of the rise of fascism, we also have themes of, I guess, the 2016 elections in the US, because there is an election going on in the wizarding world in the background of this story. Apparently, I didn't even realize that the wizards had a president. I didn't know there was a president wizard. So we're starting to get a bit more of an understanding of the structures, the governmental structures of this world. And apparently an election is going on, like I said, in the background of these, you know, shenanigans that are taking place. And we have these two clear candidates whose names, please don't ask me to recall their names. Please don't ask me to do that. Okay, that's asking for too much. And it's basically like a two-party system, in the same way that a lot of democracies in human politics function, until of course Grindelwald swoops in there. Grindelwald swoops in and manages to try and steal the vote because he has this special creature called a Chillin, I think it's called. I kept thinking like, oh, just chilling, hanging out. So I'm thinking it's called a Chillin, right? But yeah, this like deer-like creature is called a Chillin, which we see be born at the beginning of this film. And he and his goons actually managed to snatch away the baby Chillin from the mother. And I guess that's the reason why. It's because apparently there's this tradition where the Chillin would be able to see through your soul or your future or something, and would be able to pick the person that is purest of heart or whatever. And so this Chillin, who has been killed by Grindelwald and somehow reanimated, but he looks dead because he's grey. I didn't know what. We'll talk about it in a second, okay? But Grindelwald reanimated this Chillin and like trained it to bow down to him, so that when we get to that final moment where all of the wizards are watching and the Chillin chooses him, he can be declared president of the wizarding world. I keep calling it the wizarding world, even though that's the name of the franchise, but like I'm talking about the world of wizards in the film. Now again, it has to be said, this is a dumb storyline. This storyline makes zero goddamn sense, okay? And now let me tell you why. So first of all, the whole purpose of these democratic elections is to allow the people to choose their next leader. That's literally the whole purpose. Like, that's what that shifty German guy says. He's like, let the people choose and allow them to have, you know, Grindelwald as one of their options. And now, of course, he's working with Grindelwald. He's shady as hell, and anyone could have seen that. We'll talk about that in a second. Yeah, that's literally the whole point of these democratic elections, is to allow the wizards to have their say. And so tell me, why is there a thousands-year-old tradition where there's this special creature who can bow down to the person who's purest of heart, and therefore basically manipulating, basically influencing the entire population of wizards to vote for said person? Why? How would that make sense? How would it make sense to have a magical creature literally tell you who to vote for and then still call that a democratic process? You haven't voted for your choice. You haven't voted for your choice because that magical creature has told you who to choose. I don't understand how this is a democratic process. It makes no goddamn sense. The next issue is that we're dealing with a population of wizards. We're dealing with people who have been trained from childhood to magically manifest all kinds of things from their literal imaginations. And yet not a single one of them thought it was shifty as hell that this bad guy who was literally out on the run, like the authorities literally wanted to throw him in a cage and throw away the key 2 days ago, 48 hours ago, this bad guy all of a sudden has a Chillin kneeling to his feet and declaring him to be pure of heart. No one found that a bit strange. No one found that a bit sus. No one thought to themselves, well, hang on, what if that's just a projection of a Chillin? Well, hang on, what if that Chillin has been mind controlled? Well, hang on, what if this spell or that spell has been performed on this Chillin? Oh, hang on, maybe we have been manipulated to think that there's a Chillin there. Why were brains not working? These are supposed to be wizards. There were literal wizards, warlocks, and witches in attendance in this meeting, and no one put their wand up to say, I think this is a bit shifty, I think this is a bit sus. That is ridiculous to me. That is ridiculous. If that happened in the human world, people would be like, oh, that's just like CG, or oh, that's just Photoshop. Like, no one would have believed it in the real world. So why then do these wizards, who again have been trained to spot these things, not think to themselves, well, hang on, something is off here? Especially considering that the Chillin itself was grey as hell. The Chillin looked dead. The Chillin looked dead. And also, speaking of the chillin, it's supposed to be like a really precious species, like a really highly regarded species that can look into the future. Like, that is something that is truly precious and something that should absolutely be protected. So why is it then that this, mother chillin was allowed to just give birth in the wild and no one was out there actually looking after the chillin? Surely it would have been guarded by 1,000 wizards because it's so important and precious in their wizarding world. It makes no sense that Grindelwald was able to get a hold of the chillin so easily to begin with. And also, aside from the whole chillin fiasco, which I'm upset about, but I need to move on from, there's also the question of why on earth would anyone accept Grindelwald to be one of the candidates for this election to begin with. And I know there was some manipulation and corruption at play here, but I just think it's so silly that the entire population of wizards literally turned around and was like, that guy was a criminal 2 seconds ago, but I guess now he's one of the candidates, and I guess now that's someone that I can vote for, especially if that chillin says so. Like, how could that possibly be true democracy? And again, I'm very well aware it's supposed to be a reflection of what's going on in the real world and, a commentary on fascism and corruption in government and elections and whatever, but the analogy falls flat when you have so many conveniences as a part of this story, especially considering the story exists in this fantastical world. And another thing that really annoyed me about that end sequence is that no one stood up and did anything. We have this whole crowd of powerful beings, of these wizards, and you also have our main gang, led by Newt Scamander, and literally everyone was just standing around doing absolutely nothing until Credence came along out of nowhere, and he was the one to actually use his voice and say, this guy has tricked you all. Like, this chillin isn't even alive, it's dead. Like, why did no one else say anything? It drove me insane. And that's an issue with this entire franchise. Like, I've noticed it in the films throughout, is that there'll be scenes where Grindelwald is literally just pacing around in a circle, speaking his powerful hate speech, and everyone is just standing around listening and like, oh, what do we do? You're wizards. You can literally just point your wand and end this in a second. It frustrates the hell out of me. So yeah, that was yet another example of people just standing around doing nothing. But then Credence does come along. He makes himself useful for the last 5 minutes of this film. And let's get into the character of Credence, shall we? Because in the first film, a big deal was made about the fact that this character was it an obscurus? Oh God. I'm not a Harry Potter girly. Was he an obscure? I don't remember, okay? But he was supposed to be a very special being. And then in the second film, we find out that he is, in fact, a Dumbledore. And he was, in fact, supposed to be Albus Dumbledore's brother. But wait, that was also retconned in this third film, because now he's not Albus Dumbledore's brother. He's perhaps his son. But no, he's not his son. He's actually his nephew. It's his brother's son. So, now we've figured that out. And also, he was supposed to be this big secret that the Dumbledore family kept in the previous films. But in this film, we find out that they just didn't know. And they just, Dumbledore just didn't know that he was gone or something. Again, this storyline was just so poorly written. He was such a big deal in the previous films, and here he was just yet another unnecessary character in a cast full of unnecessary characters. And speaking of a cast full of unnecessary characters, let's go through my thoughts on some of the good guys, some of Dumbledore's gang. Let's start off with Dumbledore, actually, because I must say, okay, one of the few things that this franchise has gotten right is casting Jude Law as young Dumbledore. Absolutely. I think he's a great young Dumbledore. He's perfect casting for this role. Is Dumbledore supposed to be Irish? Because he sounded Irish at times. I can't remember if he sounds Irish in the previous film, but if he is supposed to sound Irish, then great. If not, then that might be a problem. We might need to fix that. Because Jude Law was definitely giving Irish at times. But otherwise, I do think he's great casting. And like I said, I do think that he and Mads Mikkelsen have a better on-screen presence together. They have better chemistry in comparison to Johnny Depp, whose, portrayal of Grindelwald was just so out there that it made no sense to me that Dumbledore would fall in love with Grindelwald to begin with. But anyways, yeah, Jude Law as Dumbledore, mwah, that's one of the few bright spots in this franchise. And I have to say, the casting overall isn't the problem. You know, a lot of these actors are really great and they've been really well cast. The problem is that there's just way too many characters overall. Way too many characters. We're gonna have to do a speed run over these characters that I've left behind for the very end of this review, because there are just way too many of them to dive into any depth, both in this review and in this franchise, clearly. So next up we have Newt, and the only note that I have here on my laptop is we have Academy Award winner Eddie Redmayne twerking with crabs. Twerking with crabs. Like, I really could not make this stuff up. In the same film that tries to tackle the rise of fascism in the wizarding world, we have Newt Scamander twerking with crabs. And so next up we have his brother Theseus, and yet another somewhat bright spot in this franchise is exploring the relationship between Newt and Theseus. I wish they dedicated more time to that storyline, because I do think it's a bit interesting, having this kind of rivalry between the two. The fact that Newt feels less than, especially when he's constantly compared to his brother. I think that's really interesting, and it's a shame that they try to pack in so many different storylines, like Newt being in love with that brunette woman whose name escapes me and I don't care about. I wish they just kind of gotten rid of all of that stuff and focused on some good unique angles here that we could really get invested in. But anyway, so we do have Theseus, and I have here in my notes, his fiance died in the previous film. You know, Zoe Kravitz, she died in the film. And also on social media. In the case of the films, it was no issue for Theseus because he promptly moved on to the first black woman who landed on his lap. And then I wrote here, the darker the chocolate, the richer the taste. Because that's literally what happened. Can you look me in the eyes and tell me you did not see the sparks between Theseus and Lally Hicks? Could you do? You're lying. You're absolutely lying, okay? And next up we do have Lally Hicks, who is a new addition to the cast, and I'm really happy to see her enter this world because I like to see more dark-skinned black women be a part of the Harry Potter verse, or the wizarding world, which was previously quite monochrome. But yeah, I am really happy to see that they are incorporating a dark-skinned female character in this franchise, because previously the only you know, women of color that we got in this franchise were incredibly light skinned, like Zoe Kravitz and the other woman who was the head of the New York branch of the Wizarding World, whatever. Anyways, I will say though, much love to Jessica Williams, who portrays the character, but I really didn't like the way that she spoke. I really didn't like her cadence and her pattern of speech. I thought it was a bit too exaggerated and it felt really fake and forced, and I wish that the director had done his job and told her this so that she would have toned it down with the rest of the crew. But whatever, either way, I think she is a promising character, and I do like the fact that once again we have a black woman in this franchise, even if it isn't a franchise that I'm personally invested in. And speaking of dark-skinned people in this franchise, we also have the return of Yusuf, who had this, like, he was a part of the whole mission that Dumbledore set out his team on, where he was supposed to pretend to have joined Grindelwald's side, to which I say, how did Grindelwald not realize that something shifty was going on? Like, he is so dumb or so distracted. How did he not realize that something shifty was going on? And I'm guessing it's because, you know, he trusted Queenie to tell the truth, and he trusted her to say, like, oh, this guy plans to betray you or whatever, as she was reading his mind. But yeah, it was just kind of weird that Grindelwald was so easy to let him in, because we could see it coming from a mile away that he would end up betraying him. And also another question that I have written down here is that, can he still not remember his sister? I don't know if they resolved this at the end of the film, but yeah, in the film we do see Grindelwald wiping away all memories of his sister, because Grindelwald had killed his sister, and obviously that would harbor some ill feelings towards Grindelwald. So he wanted to get rid of those memories to ensure Yusuf's loyalty to him, and I'm just wondering if he ever got those memories back. And finally, when it comes to the good guy gang, we have Jacob and Queenie. As I've already said, when it comes to Queenie, it makes no goddamn sense why she would side with Grindelwald. Like, he's literally opposed to what she wants. Like, she wants to live a life with Jacob freely, happily, and in love. And he is literally a fascist who is against that. And so it literally just made no sense why she would side with him. I couldn't believe my eyes and ears when I was watching the second film, you know, last week. It made no sense. I'm literally breaking down. It made no sense why she would join him. I've never seen such a dumb plot twist in my life. Anyway, so that's Queenie. She was really upset and depressed throughout the majority of this film until the very end when, you know, she and Jacob get back together again and actually end up getting married at the very end there. And it was kind of wild how easily Jacob allowed her back into his life again, especially because, again, she was siding with the Nazi, whatever, you know, the man who wanted him dead, whatever. Anyways. But then we have Jacob himself. He was really depressed at the beginning of the film because he had lost Queenie and, you know, boohoo. Jacob doesn't need to be in this franchise. I like this character, okay? I like Dan Fogelman. I like the way he portrays this character. He's fun. You know, he's a cute little character. Nothing against Jacob, except he doesn't need to be in this franchise, really. Like, he doesn't... We don't need him. We don't need this muggle or no-mage character, really. So yeah, that would be my only critique, especially considering, like I said, how overflowing this cast is already with unnecessary characters. I would definitely scrap Jacob. And actually, that ties into my thoughts on this franchise overall, and that is that it's like two franchises squished into one, and it's really not working, because essentially we have one half of this franchise that deals with the Fantastic Beasts elements, you know, as these films are called. You know, they deal with these fantastical creatures and, you know, the wonder and awe of the wizarding world in a much more optimistic and, you know, magical and imaginative way, with characters like Newt Scamander and Jacob. And then we have the other side of this story, which is dealing with the rise of fascism and wizarding Nazis and, you know, the new wizard Hitler. Like, it's dealing with all of these dark, serious themes, and you have these more serious, you know, portrayals of these characters like Dumbledore and Grindelwald, and it just makes no sense to have these two meshing together in each installment of this franchise. To me, it'd make more sense if they'd focused on the Dumbledore and Grindelwald storyline in the films, and then had perhaps developed a HBO Max series dealing with the Fantastic Beasts that were featured in both the Harry Potter films and in the new franchise films. That to me is how this whole thing should have been structured. It makes no sense why these films are called Fantastic Beasts when clearly, as we go on, or if we go on, these Fantastic Beasts are increasingly becoming an afterthought. And so with all of that being said, I'm going to be giving Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore a 6 out of 10. It was just a mess. Like, a lot of these storylines don't make a lick of sense, and considering I'm someone who already doesn't care about this franchise, it's just a tall order to ask me to care about all of these storylines with a bunch of characters and a convoluted mythology that at the end of the day doesn't even make any sense. So yeah, that's it from me. Now that I told you guys my thoughts on Fantastic Beasts 3, it's time for you guys to let me know what you thought of this film down in the comments below. Please be sure to subscribe to catch new videos coming up. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.